Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This episode is a questions and answers. Yes, questions from you and answers from me. Before we get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to support the channel and the work that we do here on Astral Club, you can do so on Patreon. When you do, you get advanced episodes on Sunday, no commercials, a library of downloaded episodes for your podcast app, and a Patreon email where we can talk back and forth. And if you're interested, there is a link in the description. Next up, private lessons. If you'd like to learn to astral project and explore time and space and dimensions and what have you, be more than glad to work with you. If you're interested, you will find an email in the description and just request information and I'll send that off to you. Okay, I always love questions and answers because you guys always ask me some questions that are fun and worth talking about. So let's get into it. The first question comes from the Astral Projection Partner Technique episode. And Apollo asks, what's the difference between the etheric plane and the astral plane? The term etheric plane was used in theosophy. Charles Ledbetter was the author involved. There's some disagreement on the terminology here. However, based on my best knowledge, I would say the etheric plane can either be described as the lower part of the astral plane, in other words, the lower astral, or a bit of a boundary layer that's shadowy, that borders the physical and the astral. It's one or the other. So there's disagreement. Those are my theories on it. Next up, Squirtle 3012. Well, I remember Squirtle as a Pokemon. My daughter was into this when she was young. As I recall, he evolves to a war turtle, and his weaknesses are electric and grass. I mean, I understood the electric. I mean, you stick your finger in a socket, you're going to have a problem. But grass, really? I mean, are the suburbs Squirtle's nemesis? It's odd. At any rate, enough of that nonsense. Squirtle wanted to know, Squirtle, oh, I'm kidding. How can he get better at controlling his emotions in astral projection? This is a very important concept and question, so thank you for that. If you allow your emotions to get the best of you on the astral plane. And it's very easy to do that because another name for the astral plane is the emotional plane. You will find that when you astral project, if you allow your emotions to get out of control, they will consume you. And when that happens, I don't care if it's too much fear or if it's too much joy, your physical body will pull you back. It will pull your astral form back inside because there is a self-defense mechanism that operates autonomously in your brain. And when it senses those signals, because keep in mind, there's signals going back and forth between your astral and your physical body because you are connected by the astral cord. Now, this isn't something you normally want to be conscious of while you're projecting, because if you think about your physical body, you'll end up going back. But if you don't control your emotions, you will get pulled back to your body repeatedly because that's the way the auto defense system works. It doesn't discriminate between fear, joy, or anything else. Strong emotion is a positive danger. You get pulled back. So how do you work at controlling your emotions in the astral? Because it is a lot more challenging than the physical. Well, I used to, and still do, meditate on quieting the inner storm of my emotions. I would examine my various emotions and try to feel them. the best way that I could during the meditation. I would remember a time, for example, when I became angry and acted out. Now, during the meditation, I will use my will. Will is always shown in caps when I write it, to assert control over this and my other primitive emotions. Eventually, you will learn to be able to control your emotions, not just in the astral, but also the physical. I'm not saying emotions are bad. They're not. They're a big part of what makes us human. However, if you allow your emotions to rule your logical self, you will find yourself landing in situations time and time again that are not to your advantage. You want to manage your emotions and not the reverse. Next up, in the podcast named When Aliens Attack, Creative777 asks, "Hi Rick, all of your recent videos about aliens are really interesting. Do you know if the Greys have nervous systems like us, and if they experience pain when injured? Also, I have heard that there are two types of them, the tall ones and the smaller ones. If this is so, have you met both of them, and how are they different?" Okay, first up, let's talk about the nervous system. I really don't have any direct knowledge of this that I can actually recall. I I don't recall seeing Greys injured or in pain personally. It makes sense to me, however, that they would have a nervous system with pain receptors. Pain is unpleasant, but it's also extraordinarily useful. There's a reason why all vertebrates and a good number of invertebrates feel pain. Pain is your body's way of pointing out that there's a problem that needs to be addressed. So it's actually, even though for those of us who suffered chronic pain, it's actually a positive thing because it helps us know we're hurt and that we need to attend to it. I assume they would have a similar system based on just how prevalent such pain signals are here on Earth. As far as the larger and the smaller ones among the Greys, yes, there are, and I've seen both. I've noticed that the smaller ones, and keep in mind that Greys reproduce through cloning. They're masters. They're masters at genetics. I do believe that they have genetically manipulated the smaller bodies because they're more compact and they're much more useful for long distance traveling through space. And since the Greys operate in a caste system, they already know what your job is going to be. And these smaller bodies still allow them to do what they need to do, but it's also a better package as far as space travel is concerned. So there's the answer to that. In the episode When Aliens Attack, Ralph Rodriguez, 8211, asks, "Hey Rick, have you ever had any interactions with godlike entities like Shiva or Ganesh? Also, have you ever thought to travel back in time to see the Garden of Eden just to see if it was real?" I haven't seen any entities or met any that I was convinced were actually godlike in the typical definition, the way we typically define gods. I don't want to get into that, though. That's a whole program in and of itself. So no, I have not met any entities that I was convinced that were gods. As far as going to the Garden of Eden, my understanding is that's a myth. However, if it wasn't, I wouldn't know where to go. The Mormons say the Garden of Eden was in Missouri. that's their theory. I think most people would probably say, no, no, it would be somewhere in the Fertile Crescent between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, because that was one of the early zones where humanity started building cities and having their first farming villages and what have you. So no, I wouldn't know, even if it did existed, I wouldn't know when and where to go. Besides, as I recall from my theology training, that the garden is guarded by what's the word? Was it cherubim or seraphim? I forget. Anyway, powerful angelic type entities with flaming swords. That sounds like a very unpleasant day. So I guess my answer is all around no, and I don't think I will be traveling to the Garden of Eden anytime in the future. Oski 7423 asks, what do you think happened to those aliens in Siberia with a crashed craft? If you recall back to the When Aliens Attack episode, I described a summary, a KGB summary, which was the name of the Russian state security while they were under communism. Today it's called the FSB. But back then it was the KGB, and their job was to do all sorts of spying things, but also internal security. And in this story, as outlined by this declassified KGB document that was left on the CIA info site. And remember, if you want to check out some fun stuff, you can go to CIA FOIA, which is CIA Freedom of Information Act. And you can put in some search terms, and sometimes you can come up with some interesting declassified documents. In this particular situation, there was this saucer, evidently, flying saucer, that was overlooking a Soviet military exercise. According to the story, it seems to me like one of the missile launch officers, this is surface-to-air missiles, got a little trigger happy and launched a missile at this craft. It evidently knocked the craft down. And I know that sounds like, why would our missiles knock down an alien craft? Look, I don't know exactly what their defense capabilities are, if they were having a bad day, if a missile launched that close up caught them unguarded. I don't know. All I can tell you is what the declassified KGB document said. And it said they were shot down. It then also said that various crew of that craft exited, and they were small gray types. And apparently they joined together and deployed some sort of an energy weapon, which pretty much turned everyone to stone, except for folks, the two soldiers who were standing a little bit further away behind a tree. I don't know what happened to those aliens. It wasn't mentioned in that KGB extract that I read. Now, keep in mind, it did indicate that there was actually 250 pages associated with that sighting, but all of that wasn't available. Only that extract that I read through for you, and it didn't mention what happened. My guess is if the Greys were able to utilize that weapon, that if I were the Russians, I would have delayed sending more good soldiers after bad and allowed them to clear out. However, who knows? I don't know. Maybe they were rescued. Maybe they were killed. Maybe they were captured. I don't know. It's certainly an interesting story and an interesting question. The next question, I'm not going to mention the name of the individual who posed it, because they're a good member of Astralclub. And it's a personal peeve for me, though. They ask me whether a particular thing was possible, and then I indicated that I had some serious questions about something like that existing. It was like a magical item, let me just say. And I had some doubts about it. And then he came back as soon as I answered it, saying that, yes, it is in fact true. And then my question was, why would you ask me questions if you already know the answers to them? I mean, why ask me, is it possible for this particular magical item to exist? And then I answer you, and then you reply, oh, well, yes, it does in fact exist. Well, then why ask me the question? If you already know the answer, why ask me the question? I never understood that. It's just a private peeve, though, no big deal. Robert Burns, 9113, commented, hey, Rick, brother, I love your content. I'm pretty drunk right now, but I love it, brother. My reply is, the perceived quality of my content increases as your blood alcohol levels rise. In the Astral Travel Scams podcast, Matthew, and just to remind you, during this particular podcast, I just went over some items that were available on eBay that claim to have abilities to assist you in astral projection. I found those claims to be highly suspect, and we all had a little fun making fun of them. Matthew RMT said he laughed out loud and he appreciated the sarcastic humor. He said that he has a slightly different take on some of these items. He believes that smell can be a powerful tool, and that things like incense and crystals, for instance, can help you to focus your energies such that they might assist you with the astral projection process. And, I wouldn't necessarily disagree there, especially if these items, like, smells, for instance, or crystals, were used by someone who was fairly sophisticated in the science and the use of astral projection. My problem is that many of these types of items are sold and are portrayed in such a way that they attract those who are newbies, who are not really familiar with the process of astral projection and how it's done. They've heard the term, they know a little bit about it, and now they see these items and the claims that these items make. And they start thinking to themselves, because they don't know any better, they're still new. And my fear is that they will be taken in by these items and that they'll spend good money. Look, if $10 is no big deal to you, or $20, I really don't have a major problem, because some of these items might be of some entertainment value to you. But when I start talking about items that run $300, $300 is a good sum of money. And that could be used to buy quite a nice little library of astral projection books, for example. Books that could actually help you along the way to beginning to astral project. I just don't like the idea that there's some new person out there who's going to spend that large amount of money and then be disappointed when that haunted piece of jewelry or that enchanted, possessed doll doesn't deliver on the astral projection talents that it had promised. And then as a result, the individual will just, whenever they think about astral projection, they'll think about it negatively, about the time they wasted $300. That's my main problem with, with the whole magical astral projection items on eBay. Listen, there's nothing wrong. I have a numerous crystals myself, and they're useful for energy work and what have you. I haven't really used them a lot in the past. It was more further years ago. But they're great to have around. But at the same time, I'm not going to treat them like they were magical objects. They are natural items, and they have the energies with which they were made stored within them, and that if used properly, through your own powers, these minerals, for instance, can help you channel your abilities in such a way that they can be utilized more effectively. But once again, the sophisticated user is not being targeted by these particular eBay ads. I can tell just by reading what they've written here. This is not something that would attract anybody who really knows what they're doing with astral projection or really any other occult science for that matter. Well, there you go. I just wanted to cover some of those great questions. There's always lots of good questions, so I can only mention a certain select number of them. I want to thank everybody who asked those questions, and please hit the like button if you enjoyed that. Share it with those of like minds. Subscribe if you haven't already. Please, more questions and comments if you have them. They might end up in the future on a future questions and answer episode here on Astral Club. This is Rick, and as always, I will see you on the astral plane.